Hi, my name's Aaron and this is my thought for the week. This is my bonsai tree. I got this tree for Christmas, so surprisingly it is still alive. But when I got this tree, it had leaves that came out to around here. You couldn't see any of that trunk. It probably looked a bit more like a small bush, if we're honest, when I first got this tree. And so I was like, well, how do I look after this? This isn't quite what I thought the bonsai tree would be. But how do I look after it? And so I spent some time on the internet, spent some time looking on YouTube, and I found out that I had to prune my bonsai tree. Now, when we talk about pruning, that takes us straight to John 15. And I've got my Bible here. John 15, which is Jesus talking, and he's talking about the Father being the gardener. And it says this: I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. And he cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. And there's a couple of things that I now understand about pruning thanks to this bonsai tree. And the first of those is I had to reveal the shape of the trunk. I had to take away the bits that made it look like a small bush. And there are sometimes things in our lives, areas in our hearts, where actually this isn't there to glorify Jesus. This thing in my life doesn't glorify him. And we've been talking a lot in church recently about consecration and setting ourselves apart. And part of consecration and part of setting ourselves apart is saying to the Lord, Lord, would you prune those areas in my life that actually don't glorify you, that don't big you up, that don't make you look good. And so that's one thing about pruning. I had to be involved in revealing this nice trunk that's there. Otherwise, you'd have just looked at it and thought it was a bush, and reveal these sort of pads and stuff. And that's to keep on top of. And then the other thing about pruning is actually when we prune, it encourages new growth. And so you can see there's some areas on this plant that actually have a lighter green colour. And that's because I've pruned it. I've actually recently cut it back as well. But the lighter green bits are the areas that are new growth. And it says in scripture, actually, so that it will be even more fruitful. And so sometimes there are bits in our hearts and in our lives when the Lord would say, would you allow me to prune this area because I want to encourage new growth in another area of your life. There might even be things that were good for a season that the Lord told you to step into, and yet now he's saying, I want to cut that bit off because I want to allow what I have for you next to flourish. And it's not going to flourish if you've got your time and energy stretched over a few different places.